that beautiful blue state that I'm from, California. Yeah, so a recent new study has shown that really despite the local reform efforts, police profiling has gotten worse in California. And the data provided by the state attorney general, well, it reveals the following per the San Francisco Chronicle. Black people are far more likely to be stopped by police than white people, and that the disparity widened in 11 of the state's 15 biggest law enforcement agencies from 2019 to 2020 is very much a reality for many of us living in California. Now, Black people were nearly 6 times more likely to be stopped by police than white residents in 2020 when you factor in the relative city populations of the racial groups. Now, in Oakland, Black people were 5.3 times more likely to be stopped. Sacramento, where I'm from, Black people were 3.7 times more likely to be stopped. This graphic here really seems to say it all. And as you may imagine, there's also disparities in contraband searches of those who are stopped. Yeah, so also per the Chronicle, despite being stopped and searched far more often than white people, Black people in California were less likely to be found carrying contraband, the data shows. They were, however, more likely to have force used against them. You cannot tell me that racism isn't alive and well, even in these blue states and territories. That's right, because it doesn't matter your political party. Racism is something that is everywhere. It infiltrates regardless of how you vote. Now, a police reform advocate from Oakland, his name is John Jones III. He pointed to a fundamental flaw in California's attempt really to fight racial profiling. He noted that the states quantify the extent of the bias that he and other Black people are facing, but he says that California hasn't pursued aggressive measures to prevent it. In an interview, Jones shared his own experience with law enforcement. He recounted in 2015 that there was an incident in which he was pulled over driving home from a Warriors game at Oracle Arena. He said 6 Oakland police officers approached his car with their guns and flashlights drawn. The officers, he said, told him they had pulled him over because he was driving a new Toyota Corolla with a paper license in the window, not a metal license plate, and because he was in a rough area of East Oakland. Yeah, that definitely sounds pretextual without a doubt. The fact that he was driving with having the DMV issued tags that you're supposed to have when you're awaiting your license plates. Anyway, the issue with the data is really that it's solely based on police reports, which makes it really difficult to verify the accuracy of that data itself. It's also not uncommon for police to report incomplete and false data. So this is also what we know. For example, the Los Angeles Police Commission's Inspector General reviewed 0.2% of over 700,000 stops that the LAPD made in 2019, and they found officers did not account for all of their actions, most often searches, in about 18% of the stops. That's according to RIPA's 2022 report. This says a lot. So if 20% of just stops alone are not being fully reported, you can't tell me that the data is going to be solid and sound so that you can even use it in some way to help curb this racist pretextual behavior, because that's exactly what is going on here when you have Black people being stopped at far higher rates than white people, yet being less likely to actually have contraband, yet still being more likely to face inappropriate and excessive uses of physical force from police. Jeff.
I so badly want to make fun of the fact that you're from California, but I have no room to talk. I'm clearly from Ohio and I wear it daily. So look, we know that Black and white people use and sell drugs at similar rates, and you can still see these numbers as indicative of racism. But I want to point out a Stanford study from May of 2020, because I use it all the time because people call these things into question. It says the largest ever study of alleged racial profiling during traffic stops has found that Blacks, who are pulled over more frequently than whites by day, are much less likely to be stopped after sunset when a quote, veil of darkness mask their race. Just in case anybody is wondering that, if the lopsided numbers towards Black people getting harassed and arrested and stopped by cops has anything to do with violence or criminality, it doesn't. We already know what's going on. It's just plain old racism. I don't know why we can't name it and label it and say what it is.
So are you saying from this Stanford study that when they can't tell that we're Black, we're less likely to get stopped? So essentially, when I darken the windows of my car, that can help in some way?
I have very dark window tint in my car, and in Ohio, I'm probably past the legal limit. But yes, Adrienne, darken your tint so they won't notice who you are at night, and you're less likely to be stopped.
Absolutely, and I will also say that there are other forms of biases that can come into play when it comes to police. For example, as a Black woman, I'm well aware of what I look like, and I actually teach on the subject of beauty bias. And so when it comes to police, I don't have a problem. I have no problem whatsoever, and I know why that is when it comes to law enforcement getting pulled over, because I get out of tickets and I don't have to do anything, nothing at all. And so I know there are other forms of bias. Also, driving a luxury car, the fact that I speak quote unquote proper English from my private school days. These are all forms of bias that when people don't necessarily check those boxes, the level of injustice they can face it's absolutely disgusting, and it is wrong. And we're seeing it play out each and every day. And unfortunately, there's nothing being done by our system, yet people continue to suffer. Jeff, any last thoughts?
Well, an additional form of bias is just being poor, living in poverty. And unfortunately in this country, because of laws and policies in the past and present, the face of poverty is Black people. So if you do not drive a luxury car, or you do not look like you have money, you are more likely to get pulled over because you may have a tail light out, or you may not have your license and registration. And then that's when some of the dangerous and destructive things from getting stopped and being pulled over can happen, such as excessive violence or just being pulled over for no reason. So that is an additional bias in addition to everything you just stated.
Yes, without a doubt. And it's really disheartening how these people in positions of power, these members of law enforcement, are exerting their biases and really just taking advantage of people to continue to hold down those who are most marginalized among us.